In V Rising, soul shards are everything. They're the pinnacle accomplishment, the most overpowered items in the game, the goal and win condition for most tournament servers. They are proof of beating the game. Now, I like pushing games to their limits, and so it's only natural that I try to attain the soul shards as fast as possible. In the last 2 episodes of Breaking the Game, I figured out how to kill both Styx the Sunder and the Winged Horror at level 58. In this episode, I'm going to take a step back from doing the final bosses to get the soul shards and instead look at how we're going to get there. Starting from minute 1 up to level 58, I want to have a clear and consistent path to get there as fast as possible. So in this video, I want to outline my path to get the best quick start to get a reliable level 58 as fast as possible. Now I will note really quick, I did have a live split speedrun timer going on this test run I did, but I recorded the wrong scene and so we can't see it, which is unfortunate, but I'll try to do my best to give you an idea of the timings we're looking at for some key points. So right off the bat, the most pivotal part of the early game is Quincy. He's the gatekeeper to Iron and the guy that can get you out of the early game clown fiesta with all the other players on the server. Now there are 2 ways of breaking the gate to kill Quincy. One is killing the ferocious bear and slamming it down, and the other is to kill Clive, make a bomb, and then blow it up. Each of these has their own benefits. If you're doing a speed run, the bear is the way to go. If you practice it a little bit, you can kill both the bear and Quincy within the first 30 minutes, which makes it much faster than any other route. However, there are some pretty big downsides to the bear route. Most importantly, you're not very well set up for after Quincy. Right after you kill him, you pretty much want to gather all of the stuff that you need for the smithy and iron weapons, if not Hellfang armor as well. But in order to do this effectively, you need a merciless copper weapon. Technically you can do this without, but for my tests it just takes way too long. However, conveniently, Clive always drops a merciless copper weapon recipe on death, which means the Clive route gives you the setup you need for after Quincy. Now you could go do the bear and Quincy first and then go to Clive after, and it would probably still be a little bit faster than the pure Clive route, but there are some more downsides to that. Most importantly is consistency. For some reason, a lot of servers don't like the bear Quincy speedrunners, and so they buff bear, making it much harder and slower to do. So, all of this considered, I think the best route to consistently set up the early game is to ignore the bear and go to the standard Clive route. As always, we're going to start with Mr. Alpha Wolf, and then we're actually going to go up to the Trapper camp first, but not kill Keely the Frost Archer, as that takes too long for the important early game. Instead, just going up there to gather 4 leather from the chests and boxes that we'll need a little bit later. After that, we're going to go up to the Dunley farmlands to grab a horse and some worker blood from the farm there before heading back down towards the very southeast of the Farbane Woods. With the worker blood, we're going to make a simple base for the purposes of getting our gear up to level 20 in preparation for Clive. Now the plan is to abandon this base or move it as soon as I figure out what order we'll be doing the soul shard bosses in, so I just plopped it on the ground as close as possible to where Clive is. For this run, I just kept my base here the entire time, although in a real run I would probably move it after doing Quincy. In the process of making that level 20 gear, you're gonna have to wait for some planks to finish crafting or cooking, and so we're just gonna take this time to chop down as much wood as possible and stick them in the sawmill, because we're gonna need a lot of planks in the near future. Also, make sure you upgrade to the mace, as it will be the fastest weapon for mining later. Once the level 20 gear is done, go kill Clive and get the merciless copper recipe. If it's a crossbow recipe, I'm honestly not too sure what the play is. Technically, we can mine iron with the crossbow, so it works, but it's going to be super slow compared to any of the other weapons. So you can either just keep it and mine with the crossbow, or go back and redo him when he respawns to try to get a better weapon recipe. Really, whatever you would prefer or think is faster. Now, I've done this starting portion a couple of times, and it seems to be pretty easy to kill Clive in a little under 30 minutes from when you spawn in. After Clive, I like to make this study as soon as possible to get that secure, and then we're on to mining copper and making our copper weapon. Make sure to get the copper weapon of the recipe that you found so you don't waste any time on extra resources. As soon as you get the copper weapon, we're gonna go and mine sulfur ore, getting at least enough for 20 sulfur, as that will be needed for the alchemy table and bomb, but if it's still quiet around Clive, an extra 320 ore will be needed soon, so you can get that now as well if it's convenient. Now at this point we basically just need to wait for the sulfur to cook so we can go and kill Quincy. And there are going to be a couple times like this in the run where we are just sitting around and waiting. What you do in these times is sort of going to depend on the server settings. If refining rates are normal, it takes a really long time to cook all this sulfur, and especially for the iron later, and so you have more things that you can do while waiting. On the other hand, if refining times are really boosted and fast, like they often are in servers, you probably won't have too much extra time and won't be able to get too much done or go too far from your base. For this run, everything was normal settings, so I spent the time doing a copper run to make more furnaces, which helped speed things up a little bit, and then expanded out my base as well. One thing you want to make sure of here is that you queue up enough copper to cook after the sulfur to make a fishing rod, as we'll be using that later. After all of our sulfur is cooked, we can make our bomb, and it's right to Quincy. Now with standard server settings, when I killed Quincy I was a little over an hour into the run, although in a real run this timing would be heavily influenced by refining times and of course other players, as people will definitely come poke their heads in while you are doing Quincy. After Quincy, it's right to the iron mine, and we're going to try to mine 1040 to 2160 iron ore. Those numbers are minimum 1040 for the smithy and slashers, and 2160 for all of the iron we will need for the run. So again, similar to sulfur, if it's quiet and you can get all of it while you're there, do it, and if not, just get the 1040 iron and then basically just gather iron whenever you see it for the rest of the run. The iron cooking time will be quite long even with faster refining times, so during this we're gonna go kill some of the early game bosses that we skipped, as if we die with this gear it no longer really matters. So we're gonna go kill Lydia the Chaos Archer for Chaos Volley and the Chomper, both of which will be very helpful, Keely the Frost Archer for the Tannery, and then lastly Rufus the Foreman for our woodworking bench. We also need to gather enough sulfur for the smithy if we didn't get that earlier. Next we want to make the Tannery, some Night Stalker gear, a fishing rod, blood press, and the Chomper if you have enough copper for it, and gather enough copper to have 12 copper ingots, plus enough for the Chomper if you didn't already craft that. If you still have time after all of this, go kill Beatrice the Tailor and get 4 wool thread from the village while you're at it. If you don't kill her here, kill her as soon as you get the slashers. Once enough iron cooks to make the smithy and the slashers, we're going to go out and gather all of the cotton. And when I say all of the cotton, I mean all of the cotton except from the farms in Silverlight. That is unless the loot is on really high, because we need 3,120 cotton, minus 20 for every yarn we find, for the rest of the run, and we'd rather do it all at once. So bring it back, all of that 3,120 cotton, and make a loom and throw it all in there. You don't need more than one loom even with the base refining speeds, as we're not really going to use this for quite some time. Now we'll have 100 stacks of garlic from doing that cotton run, so the best thing to do is go and farm the fish oil that we'll need for our Dawnthorn armor, which is 192 fish oil total. You probably won't get all of it right now, but that's no problem. There are 2 places you can go to get the fish oil. First is Mozook Village, but I would really suggest going to the second one, which is the docks around Silverlight instead, as it's actually faster to just fish for most of their fish oil, and there are a lot of great fish to fish over there. Once we work off the garlic, no matter how much fish oil we got, head back to base, and if you mined extra iron earlier, there should be enough iron cooked to finish our crossbow and either axis or scythe. However, don't make both of them right now, just make the crossbow. Next, we're going to grab our Scourge pendant, but before you head over to Leonardia, check how much glass you have in your storage, as by the time we get back from Leonardia, we want to have at least 24. If you don't have enough, take a stop by the Bastion of Dunley and just rat all the chests and crates, and you should get enough within that. Now, in order to kill Leonardra, you must first kill the undead commander that spawns there, so make sure you get the Scourge Stone he drops, as we'll need that. And if he gives you the recipe for the Soul Reaper, I would suggest taking a detour to make it at some point, because it will speed up the bosses a lot. However, I don't do that in this run as it's not consistent. If you're not going to make the Soul Reaper or you don't get the recipe, then you can go ahead and make the axes or the scythe with that extra iron that you have. After killing Leonardra, make the table and the pendant, and then head straight to Octavian, kill him, and then go off to the Cursed Forest and go kill the Spider Queen as well. Now, just a quick note here, you might want to make some vermin salves before this part, as they help with any mistakes that you make on the bosses, as they can be a little bit challenging as you're going to be pretty under leveled. By the time I finished killing the Spider Queen in this run, I think I was a little past the 4-hour mark, or maybe a bit before it actually, I don't really know, but it was around the 4-hour mark. After the spider is dead, you want to finish gathering what you need for the Dawnthorn armor. So before you leave the forest, make sure you get the 256 ghost rooms that you're going to need, 640 scales, and 940 pristine hide. And again, fish as much as possible in here, because the fish give both scales and fish oil, which you will likely still need at this point. Once we have all that, we're basically done and set up. All that's left is to make the tailoring bench and wait for anything to finish refining and crafting, and then gathering any of the loose ends like a little bit of fish oil or iron that you may still need. If you want to make this as fast as possible, you can spend the time that it takes all this stuff to refine to make more refining stations in the tannery and the loom, or else some valuable things for you to do are to make more vermin salves for the final soul shard bosses, and getting set up to turn this shitty wooden base that you currently have into a real castle can be quite helpful. In total, this test run that I did took around 5 hours for me, which I think is a pretty decent time. Obviously, this will be heavily affected by players and heavily affected by server settings, but overall, I'm decently happy with 5 hours. It means that barring any big mistakes or trouble on bosses, it should be possible to get all 3 soul shards with one, albeit sort of intense, session.
Right in the beans.